You are not past your prime. You are in a sacred chapter of life where refinement, clarity, and strength can emerge with more depth than ever before. But there is one truth we must all embrace. Biology responds to behavior, and the decisions you make in the first hour of your day echo through every cell in your body. This isn't about vanity. This is about function. This is about freedom. Your ability to stand tall, move with grace, and stay independent depends deeply on your muscle health. And at 60, 70, even 80 years old, your muscles are still listening. They're listening to what you eat, how you move, what light you see, and how you think. Each morning is not just another page. It's a command sent into your nervous system. It's a signal, and the wrong signals, done repeatedly, don't just slow you down. They deteriorate your strength, your energy, and your spirit. If you skip breakfast, especially protein, you're telling your body, we don't need to build today, but you do. You need amino acids flowing in the bloodstream when the machinery of repair is still active. Especially now, when your muscle sensitivity to growth signals is lower, you must outsmart biology with strategy. If you sit in silence, scrolling a phone, or jumping into stress without moving your body, you're sending a message to your motor neurons. This machine is not needed today. And when the body hears that long enough, it shuts the machinery down. Use it or lose it isn't a threat. It's biology's law. Drinking coffee alone on an empty stomach feels like a ritual of alertness. But caffeine on its own spikes cortisol in the absence of nourishment. You may feel sharp, but inside your system, you're starting the day in a catabolic state, breaking down more than you're building up. And light, real, natural light, this is not a luxury. It is a biological requirement. Morning light anchors your circadian rhythm, signals your brain to release dopamine, and synchronizes the cascade of hormones that protect and grow tissue, including muscle. But let me say something even more powerful. It is not just what you eat or how you move. It is what you believe about your future. A body without vision will decay. When you rise with no mission, no mental tension, no aim, you rob the nervous system of its drive to grow. You must wake with purpose. Even at 60 or 70, your muscles will respond to consistent action, nourishment, light, and belief. Your biology is not your fate. It is your instrument. Play it with precision. When you wake in the morning, your body is in a fasted state. You've just gone 7 to 9 hours without food. And while your brain may feel rested, your muscles are in a catabolic state, meaning they're beginning to break down tissue for energy. At this point, your body is searching for raw materials to repair, rebuild, and maintain muscle. One of the most critical nutrients it needs is protein. Skipping protein in the morning sends the opposite signal, one of neglect and depletion, rather than support and regeneration. As we age, a biological process called anabolic resistance sets in. This means that your muscles become less responsive to the muscle-building effects of protein. What once required 15 grams of protein now might require 30 or more grams to stimulate muscle protein synthesis to the same degree. This makes your morning meal even more important. Delaying or skipping that essential protein window allows muscle breakdown to outpace muscle repair, contributing to sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass and strength. Protein does far more than support muscle. It regulates key hormonal pathways, including insulin and glucagon, which influence how your body uses energy. When you skip protein, especially in the morning, you may experience blood sugar crashes later in the day, poor metabolic control, and increased cravings for carbohydrate-rich or sugary foods. These metabolic disruptions can further undermine muscle maintenance by promoting fat gain and insulin resistance, which blunt your muscles' ability to absorb nutrients efficiently. In the morning, your body's cortisol levels are naturally elevated. Cortisol isn't inherently bad. It's there to help you wake up, mobilize energy, and prepare for activity. But cortisol is also catabolic. It breaks tissue down. Without the counterbalance of amino acids from dietary protein, cortisol's effects go unchecked, and you stay in a state of breakdown longer. A high-protein breakfast mitigates this by giving your body the resources it needs to shift from a breakdown mode into a build and repair state. Muscle is not just for strength. It is a metabolic organ. It regulates glucose, stores amino acids, and supports your immune system. Each time you skip protein in the morning, You miss an opportunity to stimulate the muscle building process that keeps all these functions online. And remember, the older you get, the less forgiving your system becomes. What you skip today has a compounding effect over time. Weeks become months, and soon you're facing weakness, fragility, and diminished resilience. There's also a neurological dimension. When your morning starts with a high-protein meal, especially one that includes leucine-rich sources like eggs, dairy, or lean meats, you also support neurotransmitter production, particularly dopamine. Dopamine drives motivation, attention, and physical vigor. That means protein in the morning doesn't just help your muscles, it sharpens your mind, lifts your mood, and sets your trajectory for the day. The body listens closely to what you feed it first. A high-protein breakfast isn't just fuel, it's a signal, a command. One that says, preserve muscle, protect energy, and prepare for life. Skipping it speaks another message entirely. Decline. Waking up and choosing stillness may feel restful, but biologically, it's one of the most damaging decisions you can make for your muscle health after the age of 60. The human body, particularly the neuromuscular system, thrives on early stimulation. And when you avoid movement in the morning, whether that means staying sedentary, delaying walking, or skipping light exercise, you are signaling your brain and muscles that physical readiness is not required. This not only dampens muscular engagement for the rest of the day, it also blunts the neurological patterns responsible for maintaining strength, coordination, and balance. Movement is not just physical, it is neurochemical. Your brain wakes up through physical action. 10. When you move your body, even lightly, you stimulate the release of dopamine and norepinephrine, two neurotransmitters that increase alertness, drive, and motivation. These chemicals are also involved in the initiation of voluntary movement. Without morning motion, their release is delayed or reduced, which diminishes not just how awake you feel, but how effectively your brain communicates with your muscles throughout the day. That communication, called neuromuscular recruitment, is key to maintaining muscle integrity as we age. The body's muscle fibers are like radio antennas. They listen to the electrical signals coming from the brain. The more frequently they hear those signals, the more they remain active, responsive, and adaptive. But when you avoid movement after waking, your fast twitch fibers, the ones responsible for strength and power, stay dormant. Over time, these fibers atrophy from lack of use. This isn't just about losing muscle mass. It's about losing the ability to move quickly and safely. It increases the risk of falls, fractures, and long-term immobility. Early movement also improves circulation and nutrient delivery. After hours of being still during sleep, your blood flow is slow. Movement pumps blood to your limbs, bringing with it oxygen, amino acids, and hormones like insulin and growth hormone that support muscle preservation and repair. Without this morning increase in circulation, tissues become sluggish, and repair mechanisms are compromised. Think of movement as the ignition switch for your body's repair engine. If you don't turn that key in the morning, the engine stays cold and critical processes are delayed. There's also a hormonal advantage to moving early. Light physical activities such as walking, stretching, or body weight resistance helps regulate cortisol and insulin, two hormones with significant impact on muscle health. When you move in the morning, cortisol's natural spike is better utilized. It helps mobilize energy rather than accumulating and causing harm. Insulin sensitivity also improves, meaning the food you eat afterward is more likely to be stored in muscle rather than fat. This supports lean body mass, metabolic health, and long-term vitality. Finally, morning movement acts as an anchor. It creates a pattern of consistency and rhythm, which the nervous system loves. The more regularly you activate the body at the same time each day, the more deeply the system anticipates and reinforces those actions. This leads to more stable energy, better sleep, and preserved muscle over time. Avoiding morning movement is not neutral. It is a signal, one that accelerates decline unless consciously replaced with motion, however light. Upon waking, your body naturally experiences a rise in cortisol, a stress hormone essential for getting you out of bed, increasing alertness, mobilizing energy, and preparing you for the demands of the day. This is part of a healthy circadian rhythm. However, for individuals over 60, how you interact with that natural cortisol rise can determine whether it supports or sabotages your muscle health. When you engage in stressful or jarring morning habits, checking negative news, scrolling social media, responding to emails, or entering tense conversations, you can trigger excessive cortisol spikes. These spikes push your body into a prolonged catabolic state, which directly undermines muscle maintenance and growth. Cortisol itself is not the villain. It's the context and the intensity of the spike that matters. When you combine natural morning cortisol levels with psychological stressors, especially those perceived as threats or requiring immediate problem solving, you amplify the stress response. This has systemic effects. Elevated cortisol over longer periods leads to increased breakdown of muscle tissue to mobilize glucose, a process called gluconeogenesis. The body literally pulls amino acids from your muscle fibers to fuel perceived crises. For someone in their 60s or beyond, this process is not easily reversed. The ability to rebuild muscle is already slower due to reduced anabolic hormone production, and sustained cortisol surges tip the balance even further toward muscle degradation. In addition, high cortisol impacts the sensitivity of your muscle cells to anabolic hormones like insulin and testosterone. Chronic spikes interfere with the body's ability to utilize protein effectively and blunt the signaling pathways that tell your muscles to grow or even maintain their current state. If you wake up and immediately enter a hyperstimulated, mentally chaotic state, you are effectively telling your body, store fat, break down muscle, and prioritize survival. This is not an exaggeration. It's a physiologic command. Your muscle tissue, already more vulnerable due to age-related changes, suffers quietly and consistently from these cues. There's also a nervous system component. When cortisol remains high, your autonomic nervous system shifts toward sympathetic dominance, a fight or flight. In this state, motor coordination decreases, motivation to exercise drops, and digestion is impaired. That means even if you do consume a protein-rich breakfast, your body may not assimilate it optimally. The nervous system governs how your body responds to both nutrients and movement. If you start your day in an agitated, overstimulated state, every muscle-preserving behavior you try to engage in becomes less effective. Furthermore, prolonged high cortisol disrupts sleep patterns, which leads to even greater hormonal imbalance the next day. Sleep is when your body repairs muscle tissue, releases growth hormone, and recalibrates cortisol rhythms. High morning stress sets off a feedback loop. Poor sleep, elevated cortisol, muscle breakdown, then more poor sleep. Over time, this cascade compounds and muscle mass slowly erodes despite your best efforts in diet or exercise. Replacing stressful morning habits with calming, deliberate practices like breath work, sunlight exposure, gentle movement, or gratitude doesn't just feel good. It alters your hormonal profile in a way that protects your muscle, sharpens your mind, and sustains your vitality as you age. Consuming caffeine first thing in the morning without any food may feel like a harmless ritual, but physiologically, it initiates a cascade of stress signals that can negatively impact muscle health, especially in individuals over the age of 60. While caffeine in moderate amounts offers some cognitive and metabolic benefits, the timing and context of its consumption matter greatly. Drinking coffee on an empty stomach in a fasted state amplifies the body's stress response and can quietly accelerate muscle breakdown over time. Caffeine works primarily by blocking adenosine, a molecule that promotes sleep and relaxation. When adenosine is blocked, alertness increases, but caffeine also stimulates the adrenal glands to release cortisol, a hormone that helps mobilize energy in times of need. This is useful in short bursts. However, if you're already waking with elevated cortisol, a natural and necessary part of the circadian rhythm, then adding caffeine without any food intensifies the spike. That results in a heightened catabolic state, where the body starts breaking down tissue, including muscle, to generate fuel. For those in their 60s and beyond, this process is particularly problematic because muscle regeneration already occurs more slowly with age. Without food, especially carbohydrates or protein, your body lacks the nutrients needed to buffer the stress response. And in this fasted and stimulated condition, blood sugar levels may rise sharply and then crash, leading to symptoms like shakiness, irritability, fatigue, or brain fog. But the real issue lies beneath the surface. These swings in blood glucose and stress hormones disrupt insulin sensitivity, making it harder for your muscles to absorb and utilize nutrients when you finally do eat. Over time, this interferes with muscle protein synthesis and promotes fat gain over lean tissue retention. Moreover, caffeine's appetite suppressing effects can delay your first meal even further. That's a problem because older adults often struggle to consume adequate daily protein. Missing the opportunity to eat a nutrient-dense breakfast shortens the anabolic window in which your muscles are most responsive to dietary protein, reducing the day's overall muscle-preserving stimulus. This compounds over weeks and months, gradually leading to a loss in muscle mass, strength, and metabolic efficiency. The effects aren't limited to just muscle tissue. Excessive caffeine on an empty stomach can also irritate the gut lining, increase stomach acid, and reduce digestive efficiency Poor digestion means nutrients from food, when you eventually eat, aren't absorbed as well, further reducing the availability of amino acids needed for muscle repair and maintenance. What begins as a quick jolt of energy turns into a long-term depletion of your body's foundational systems. Additionally, the overstimulation from caffeine without the grounding presence of food can lead to a jittery mental state, which reinforces the stress response. This sympathetic nervous system activation keeps the body in a fight or flight longer than necessary, which directly counters the parasympathetic processes required for rest, digestion, and muscle regeneration. The simple act of pairing your morning caffeine with a balanced protein-rich meal doesn't just reduce stress. It shifts your biology into a muscle-preserving mode. It's a small change that recalibrates hormonal rhythms, stabilizes blood sugar, and gives your body the signal to build rather than break down. Waking in a dehydrated state is the norm, not the exception. After 6 to 9 hours without fluid intake, your body's water reserves are diminished. This matters profoundly for muscle health, especially in individuals over the age of 60. Hydration is not just about avoiding thirst, it is about maintaining the internal environment that allows muscle tissue to function, repair, and adapt. When you neglect hydration in the morning, you compromise the very infrastructure your muscles depend on to survive and thrive. Muscle tissue is composed of nearly 75% water. Water serves as the medium through which nutrients, oxygen, and waste products move. It is essential for proper blood volume and circulation, which in turn dictates how efficiently nutrients, especially amino acids and glucose, are delivered to muscle fibers. When you start your day without rehydrating, your blood becomes more viscous, slowing down circulation and limiting the transport of critical nutrients to your muscles. This compromises not only performance, but recovery and preservation as well. For individuals over 60, hydration becomes even more critical because the body's ability to sense thirst diminishes with age. This means that by the time you feel thirsty, you are likely already significantly dehydrated. Dehydration at this stage subtly accelerates muscle breakdown. Without adequate water, the efficiency of enzymatic reactions that fuel protein synthesis decreases. This leads to a situation where even if you consume enough protein, your body may not utilize it effectively due to impaired metabolic function caused by low cellular hydration. Hydration also influences the balance of electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and magnesium, all of which are essential for muscle contraction and nerve signaling. When you neglect hydration, electrolyte imbalances can develop, leading to cramping, fatigue, and decreased neuromuscular efficiency. These effects may seem mild at first, slight stiffness or sluggishness, but they add up. The more frequently your muscles function in a dehydrated or electrolyte depleted state, the faster they lose strength and the higher your risk of injury or dysfunction. Morning hydration also plays a key role in hormonal balance. Water is required for the proper functioning of the hypothalamus and pituitary gland, centers of hormonal regulation. Growth hormone, testosterone, and insulin all critical for muscle health, are sensitive to changes in hydration status. Even mild dehydration can impair the body's anabolic muscle building response to exercise or protein intake. This makes it even more essential for older adults whose hormonal responsiveness is already reduced to begin the day by restoring fluid balance. Cognitive function also declines with dehydration, which indirectly impacts muscle health. A foggy, tired mind is less likely to initiate movement, plan meals, or engage in resistance training, all behaviors required to preserve muscle. In this way, neglecting hydration is not just a physiological problem, it becomes behavioral. Your choices change when your brain is underperforming, and those choices often steer you away from the habits that support muscle integrity. Rehydration in the morning is not optional, it is foundational. It reboots every system involved in maintaining strength, coordination, and resilience. It ensures your muscles are not operating in a state of silent strain, but rather in an environment primed for growth and preservation. Light is not just something we see, it's something we absorb, and it programs the body at a cellular and neurological level. The first light you expose yourself to in the morning dictates how your entire body regulates energy, hormones, and muscular integrity for the rest of the day. Poor morning light exposure, meaning either no exposure to natural light or only exposure to dim indoor lighting, disrupts a cascade of biological rhythms that are essential for maintaining muscle health, especially after the age of 60. When light first enters the eyes in the morning, specifically, bright light that contains blue wavelengths, it activates specialized cells in the retina called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. These cells are directly connected to the brain's master clock in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, which controls circadian rhythms. That signal sets off the release of cortisol in a precise and healthy pulse that promotes wakefulness, energy, and readiness. Without this light, the timing of cortisol is either delayed or blunted, which can lead to grogginess, poor alertness, and prolonged stress hormone release later in the day. This mistimed cortisol rhythm contributes to muscle breakdown by keeping the body in a prolonged catabolic state. Morning light exposure also affects melatonin, the hormone responsible for sleep. Melatonin needs to be suppressed in the morning for you to feel alert and active. If light is too dim or arrives too late, melatonin clearance is delayed, making you feel sluggish and less motivated to move or eat properly. This has downstream effects on muscle health. If you skip or delay morning activity and nutrient intake because your brain is still in a half-sleep state, your muscles lose the early stimulus they need to activate repair, growth, and maintenance pathways. This lack of stimulation over time leads to muscle atrophy, reduced coordination, and lower metabolic function. In older adults, circadian rhythms tend to shift earlier and become more fragile. This means the system is less forgiving to poor timing cues. Without strong, consistent light input in the morning, the rhythm of hormone release, metabolism, digestion, and muscular responsiveness becomes desynchronized. Muscle protein synthesis becomes less efficient, and nutrient partitioning, how your body decides to store or use food, tilts toward fat storage rather than lean mass retention. Even exercise becomes less effective when performed in a misaligned circadian state. Beyond hormones, light directly influences neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, which not only regulate mood and focus, but also drive movement and motivation. When morning light exposure is weak, your levels of these neurotransmitters remain suppressed, reducing your inclination to engage in physical activity or even basic movement. Over time, this promotes a sedentary lifestyle, which is one of the greatest accelerants of muscle loss in aging populations. Light is not a luxury, it's a daily nutrient. The quality and timing of your morning light determine how well your body performs essential tasks like burning fat, building muscle, regulating blood sugar, and keeping your brain sharp. Skipping or avoiding it silently erodes the biological synchrony that keeps your muscles strong, your metabolism stable, and your health intact. Muscle health is often discussed in terms of exercise, protein intake, and hormone regulation, but there's another dimension that is equally vital and often overlooked: the role of the mind. The brain and muscles are deeply interconnected, and a lack of mental engagement or sense of purpose can quietly undermine muscular integrity over time. especially in those over the age of 60, when the brain lacks stimulation, direction, or motivation. The body begins to mirror that stillness, not just behaviorally, but biologically. Purpose is more than a concept. It's a neurochemical driver. A sense of meaning or forward-looking engagement stimulates the prefrontal cortex and limbic system, areas of the brain responsible for planning, motivation, and reward. These areas communicate with the motor cortex and cerebellum, which coordinate movement. When you feel connected to a goal or reason for being, whether it's caregiving, creating, learning, or serving, your nervous system becomes more alert, and your physical body responds with energy, posture, and readiness. Without that connection, these systems downregulate. Neural firing slows, dopamine output drops, and motor circuits become less active. Over time, this results in reduced voluntary movement, which inevitably leads to muscular atrophy and frailty. The aging nervous system becomes increasingly plastic to either enrichment or decline. This means that the more you challenge your brain, the more you maintain the integrity of the circuits responsible for not just thought, but motion. Complex thinking, problem solving, social engagement, and even spiritual reflection all activate neural networks that overlap with those used in balance, coordination, and muscle control. If the mind becomes passive, these overlapping networks weaken. Movement becomes slower, posture deteriorates, and muscle activation becomes delayed or incomplete. These are not just signs of aging, they are signs of underuse. Additionally, people without a sense of purpose often experience lower levels of daily physical activity. This isn't just a matter of choice, it's biology. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter most associated with drive and reward, also plays a central role in motor initiation. Low dopamine levels make movement feel harder, motivation feel lower, and action feel less meaningful. Without a compelling reason to get up and move, the body defaults to stillness. And with each passing day of minimal engagement, muscle fibers go unstimulated and begin to waste. There's also a direct relationship between purpose and hormone levels. Studies have shown that individuals with a strong sense of purpose tend to have healthier cortisol rhythms, better sleep, and more favorable levels of anabolic hormones like DHEA and testosterone. These hormonal profiles support muscle preservation and regeneration. On the other hand, chronic mental passivity, or a feeling of drifting through the day, can increase catabolic hormone activity and inflammation, both of which degrade muscle over time. Mental engagement isn't a luxury for older adults. It's a physiological requirement. It shapes how the brain communicates with the muscles, how the hormones are released, and how the entire neuromuscular system operates. Cultivating a sense of purpose each morning, whether through service, creation, learning, or connection, acts like powerful internal stimulant. It activates systems that no supplement or exercise routine can fully replace. If you are over 60, understand this. Every choice you make in the morning is a signal to your body. It either tells your biology to build strength, preserve vitality, and stay resilient, or it triggers decline, weakness, and disconnection. Your muscles don't just respond to what you lift in the gym. They respond to light, movement, hydration, food, mindset, and purpose, especially in those first critical hours of the day. You are not fragile, you are adaptive, but adaptation demands intention. If you wake up and feed your body stress, starvation, silence, and stillness, it will learn to wither. If you rise and give it light, motion, nourishment, and meaning, it will learn to thrive, even in your 7th, 8th, or 9th decade. This is not about perfection. It's about pattern. The body is listening. Every morning is a chance to teach it how to live. Start wisely, start powerfully, because the way you begin the day is the way you age.